Welcome to Finding Certainty with your host and U.S. Army veteran, Patrick Laing. Over the next hour, you'll learn from Patrick and his expert guests how to attract more certainty into your business and your life. Now, here is your host, Patrick Laing.
Welcome to Finding Certainty. It's our favorite day of the week. Every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, we gather here on YouTube Live, on Facebook, and eventually it will be posted to all of the podcast channels following the live broadcast. I'm your host, Patrick Laing, and it's my pleasure every week to sit down with you and unpack this topic of certainty. I've been talking about it for a long time with my companies, Certainty Management, Certainty Global, and Certainty Holdings, and I've been doing this show, Finding Certainty, now for about 3.5 years. It's been a really extraordinary experience. I get to meet with guests from business, from sports, from the arts, and more, who are finding, in fact, creating and developing greater certainty in their lives and in the lives of those they touch. Each week, we have a guest who comes and helps us unpack the topic. The first Wednesday of each month, I take the full hour myself and do a monologue. I've been working through the alphabet for the last year and a half now. I just did M is for momentum, first of the year, and then with the new show here on Bold Brave TV, just 2 weeks ago, I did N is for next. I talked a little bit about this next chapter in our show and what we do next after a tragedy, what we do next when we're starting a business, overcoming a trial, etc., etc. So I'm very pleased to have a special guest today, Mr. Tyler Watson. He's the founder and CEO of excuse me. Tell me your company name, Tyler, because I just went totally blank. Elite Performance Coaching. Sorry. That's funny. I appreciate you being with us, man. I know your company name. I just went totally blank there for a second.
Lost our certainty, but that's okay. We got it back.
We lost it for a minute there. Now, Tyler Watson with Elite Performance Coaching. He's going to be sharing with you today. We're going to be talking a little bit about his story, but sharing with you his methodology, which is helping people in so many different ways, in such an impactful way. It's not just extraordinary, but it's fast and it can be permanent. And for all of us who are searching for certainty in our lives, I can't think of a better thing than to create change and do it quickly and do so in a way that we don't have to keep going back and trying to figure it out or take months and years to figure it out. So I always share two reasons why I've invited this specific guest to join us. The first reason in Tyler's case is that he is doing exactly what I'm talking about. He's helping people in their health. He's helping them in things from weight loss to their business, their relationships, maybe their self-esteem, et cetera, et cetera. He's going to share some examples today with you of how he's doing that. But the second reason is that Tyler is not only an accomplished entrepreneur, but he's also a really talented marketer. And we're going to talk a little bit about how he's built his business, because many of you out there are business owners. You're looking for ways to build your own story, your own following. And I think we can gain some good insights from Tyler today on that topic as well. You didn't know that was coming, Tyler, but I do want to pick your brain a little bit, because I can see your 7-figure award behind you from ClickFunnels. That's not an easy thing to do. I know you've got some insights to share with us there. So thanks for being with us here on Finding Certainty. I really appreciate your time, man.
Yeah.
So we always start out kind of as a stroll down memory lane. Okay, who is Tyler Watson? Where did he come from? Maybe tell us a little bit about where you grew up and about your own family, if you will, and then we'll get into what got you to where you are today and break down a little bit about your book, The Alignment Effect, and your company, Elite Performance Coaching.
Sure. So yeah, just thinking back, kind of my journey. I grew up in Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas area, and came from a very small town. My dad's what's called a clinical kinesiologist. My mom would help him in the business a lot, but through that experience, so I grew up very tiny town, not a whole lot of people, yet I had some emotional issues, as most of us tend to do. And through those experiences, I watched some things unfold that led me to where I am today, which I know you're going to ask later. But it's all kind of one story for me, because I look at my past and I look at what I went through, which I watched my parents go through a divorce when I was 12. And then I watched my mom go through 6 more divorces and my dad through 2 more. And through those experiences, she's racked them up.
Kind of a revolving door there, wasn't it, Tyler?
Yeah.
Wow.
And me being the oldest son, I took on this belief that it was my fault, and feeling like I had to save my parents and feeling like I contributed to them parting ways. And so through these experiences, I built up a lot of resistance inside towards growth. I felt like, being from a small town and nobody knew who I was, that it was going to be really hard for me to grow a business. And my dad, he is, we're from the South. And so he's a very giving soul. He loves to serve people in the healthcare business. So anytime somebody couldn't afford something, he would give it to them, and just always lowering prices, but yet at an expense of his own health and his own freedom. And I looked at this,
probably, right?
a ton on family. Well, yeah, I mean, been through a couple divorces and struggled financially for his whole life. So I look at this and I saw my dad's an amazing healer, like one of the world's best, but yet marketing wise, relationship wise, like all these pieces that I saw, I wanted to have it all. I wanted to have a good relationship. Not just a good one, but a phenomenal one. I wanted to make millions of dollars and have time freedom. I wanted to be able to have good health and be spiritually connected. And I didn't want to have to sacrifice the things that were sacred to me in pursuit of my goals, like I had seen. And so that kind of got me started on this journey, watching them go through these things. And then I went through depression from 12 to about 18 years old, suicidal tendencies, pornography addictions, video game addictions, a lot of self-sabotaging behaviors. And I became a massage therapist. I studied to become a doctor of natural medicine. I was going to take over my dad's clinic, like pursue the healing arts. But I also felt this pull that there was something more, and I didn't want to settle like I'd been seeing and I was experiencing. But I had a lot of resistance towards what I wanted, and resistance towards letting go of some of these old patterns that were addictive behaviors. So yeah, I dove into a ton of personal development.
Let me interject one thing real quick. I don't think you're alone there, right? I mean, how many teenage boys have gone through pornography, have gone through video addiction, have gone through Netflix addiction? These challenges that are so rampant these days. We're beset on all sides, right, by these influences and these challenges. And I think a lot of it comes down to that we're empty. We're trying to fill it, right? Whether it was from abandonment, from trauma, from just insecurity, right? As a teenager, it's hard, right? And so, I think your story is one that many people will relate to and resonate with, right? I relate to it in many ways. I think most of us do. And I'll tell you one other little funny story before I forget. You say your dad's a kinesiologist?
Yeah.
When I was growing up, we had a kinesiologist that we went to as a family who was amazing. His name's Craig Bueller. He's in Salt Lake City. He was the personal doctor to the Utah Jazz.
Oh, that's
And so
cool.
we'd go in to get our treatment, and there'd be Carl Malone sitting in the lobby, right? Or John Stockton or whatever. It was amazing. So every time I think of kinesiology, I think of the Utah Jazz, just so you know. But
That's awesome. That's a good
anyway,
association.
so
That's
yeah,
awesome.
keep going.
Yeah. So on this journey, I felt like change was very difficult. I also did a lot of pretending. So no one knew that I was struggling in high school. And I put
Right.
on this pretend mask and I felt like I had to be the perfect kid. And so I'd go and I became MVP, class president, straight A's, like doing all these things externally to try to prove myself and feel good enough and deserving. But
Yeah,
what I
prove your
found
worth.
was it just led to depression. And I would sit on my bed and wonder multiple ways that I could off myself. And then I'd wake up, put on a smile, do it again. And I felt like that was normal, which looking back is not okay. And I
Yeah.
believe that as human beings, there's a pandemic happening that we need to learn how to communicate. We need to learn how to understand people, what they go through. And more importantly, we need to know how to change it, how to actually shift it where it doesn't have to take years of struggle and pretending, which can cause so much trauma, so much pain, so much suffering. And yeah, we just don't need to go through that. Now that I
Yeah.
understand that it can change, it doesn't have to be something that you experience year after year after year trying to get out of, but it feels impossible to do so. Well, it's because we don't have the knowledge. And part of my mission is to teach people that there are ways that are faster than you could ever believe to shift things that you think are impossible to shift literally in minutes, and it doesn't have to take years.
Right. Well, that's why you're here. That's why I wanted you on my show, right? To share this and help share this message. I've read your book. I've gone through some of your coaching myself, and it is and can be life changing. Now, you make an interesting point, though. I want to touch on, if I may. I think oftentimes we're going through these trials, this insecurity, addictions, and maybe we put on a good face, right? I think there are millions and millions of people out there dealing with this imposter syndrome on a daily basis, right? You're dealing with things that are hidden or that you're not public about, you're embarrassed about perhaps, and you're trying to put on a good face, trying to do the best you can, but inside you are in turmoil, right? Call it imposter syndrome, call it living a lie, call it just feeling hopeless because you don't feel like there are answers, or you've tried and tried and tried and not been able to quit it. Um, I think the actual, and this is the point I wanted to make, is that I think the actual that uncertainty, that not knowing how to solve it, exacerbates the problem and makes it bigger than it had to be. I mean, we're all going to go through trials, right? We're all going to have addictive experiences or whatever the case might be. But the fact that so many people out there are beating their heads against the wall to try to figure it out. They want a better life and they don't know where to turn, right? And so it takes what could have been manageable, even in traditional methods, but that desperation, if you will, that lack of certainty exacerbates it and makes it 10 times worse. Would you agree? I mean, you've worked with hundreds and
Yeah.
thousands of people,
I
right?
mean, here's an equation that I want to share with everybody. So this is something that I've built the foundation of what I do around, and then I'll
Mm-hmm.
share like how I developed this whole thing. But one of the things is it's called the unstoppable equation. And
Yeah,
what
let
most
me interject,
yeah,
Tyler. If you're just listening to this on one of the podcast channels, and you want to actually see what Tyler is showing us here on the YouTube live, feel free to go to our YouTube channel for certainty management, or the Bold Brave TV channel for finding certainty, and you'll be able to see what he's actually showing us too. But go ahead, Tyler.
there you go. So yeah, so this U represents the speed at which someone can attain their goal. Now, this could be anything from getting into a state of certainty to letting go of imposter syndrome to any of those symptoms. But the main goal is usually people want to make more money, so more revenue in their business, hit that first 10K or 100K month or their first $1 million month, whatever their financial goal would be. or it could be a relationship piece. Maybe it's to really be connected to a loved one without all the triggers and the drama and the traumas. Or it could be something regarding health. Maybe they want to drop 30, 40, 50 pounds and keep it off where it doesn't feel like a battle. It feels just natural. And so the U represents something that you want to change, right? The speed at which you attain it. Now, here's the question. Why do some people set a goal and nail it versus others, they set a goal and they never get close to it, right? That's a big thing that I always wondered. I was like, what dictates someone who's super successful, where they set their mind and they focus on it and they nail the goal, versus someone who does the same things, does the same actions, but they're nowhere near the goal? And it came down to this. So most of the gurus that I followed, and after spending over $1 million in my personal development, going through over 600 different processes, I found that something was missing. There was a missing piece to this whole thing. And this is what most people taught. They said, okay, if you have enough skills, you gotta have skills. Your skills are going to amplify or be amplified by the work and the focus that you put in. So work and focus, they build upon each other and they multiply by your skill set. So then the whole philosophy was, okay, work really hard, just push through the resistance, buckle down, don't quit, and keep focused, have a good mindset, think positive thoughts, do your vision boards, do your affirmations, do your meditations. And if you do this and you keep working on your skill set, which is, okay, the marketing, how do I make money? How do I communicate with my partner? How do I actually, do all the doingnesses for my health plan? Those two combined, you're putting in 100 amount of energy and effort up here.
100%.
Then that's what's going to get you the result. So I tried that philosophy and I was really ticked. I was like,
you and I both.
I was putting in 100 amount of energy, but getting like 10, sometimes negative out the outcome. And my question was, this equation sucks. Something's missing here. Like, what's wrong with me? And the problem with this is because so many people teach repetition and passion and just keep gritting it, you take it on as an identity. It makes you feel like you're at fault. Something's wrong with you. But it's not actually that. Frustration comes when you put a lot of work and effort into a faulty philosophy. Frustration comes when you put
agree with you.
a lot of work into a faulty philosophy. So this was a faulty philosophy. It wasn't complete. And what I found was this missing piece. Underneath the equation, and I just actually finished a TEDx talk on this, is two forms of resistances. If you think of a magnet, and you have two magnets that are stuck together, right? You try to pull the magnet apart, but no matter how hard you pull, if it's a strong magnet, man, it can be almost impossible to pull apart. And as soon as you pull it apart a little bit, as soon as you relax, snaps back.
That's right.
So that's what's called an addiction. Addiction. And it's not just like addiction to porn or to sugar or anything, but you can actually be addicted to any form of struggle. Just like you can be addicted to sugar, just like you can be addicted to Facebook or scrolling or anything. You can be addicted to certain incomes. You can be addicted to not feeling love. You can be addicted to self-sabotage, to anything that's non-ideal, because your body feels used to that pattern and it would rather recreate something familiar, even if it's painful, than to create something new that could cause even more pain.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Tyler, because it's not necessarily something you want, but it's familiar. It's what you're used to. It's a habit, right? It could even be that I'm addicted to working hard, doing all-nighters, not getting enough sleep because that's what I've been doing for so long. I'm used to it. Even though you'd rather get more sleep, right? You'd rather you'd rather
It's not
change
a
it.
mental
You're
thing.
still drawing it to you because of
It's
familiarity, because of habit, because of it, et cetera, right? And
yeah.
there's more to it, which I know you're going to go into.
Yep. And so this goes beyond habits, beyond environment, beyond mindset, because that's what we think we have to change, which is habits are usually through willpower. We do more work, we put in the repetition, and then you do it enough times, it'll change. That's what's taught. The
Do it for
mindset, we
21
say, hey,
days, right? Do it.
yep,
Create that habit in 21 days, and then it's
yep.
all easy writing from there. Yeah,
But it's
right.
not true at all. It's not true at all. So the focus piece is, okay, we just got to change our mindset. Think and so it shall be. And really focus on your thoughts. And then the skills is putting in that work and getting better and improving, which is part of the equation. It's important. It's the top of the equation, which is only like 10% of the game. The real battle is underneath the equation, which is addictions, which is just like I said, those two magnets sticking together. You pull it apart, nope, sticks. Pull it apart, nope, sticks. It was like when I was trying to break my first financial ceiling of $1,000 a month. And I had a month where I broke through and I made $3,000 in a month. And then the next 2 months I made nothing. Balanced right back out to that, what I was used to, $1,000 a month.
Isn't that crazy?
It's insane. And people will have this all the time. I work with entrepreneurs who are making 6, 7, 8, and some 9-figure earners. And any pattern that you see that's non-ideal is actually an addiction in your body. Any pattern. So if you have my sister, she had a pattern where she would get feeling better and then she would have a wreck, literally a car wreck. And she would have sometimes multiple times a year, every single year. And it was never her fault. Someone fender bender, hitting her from behind. And I look at that and I was like, you have an addiction. So after we went through the process that I'm going to teach you, 0 wreck since. And it's been like 5 years since I did that. So crazy stuff like that, to people unable to hit their first 6 figures, to you name it. Everything is a pattern. So
you know,
addiction.
this top section, the blue on your board, U equals S, and you've got W plus F. There is a multi-billion-dollar industry that has been built around that top of the equation, right?
Oh, I contributed to that pile of
you and
funding.
I both have. I've been to hundreds of seminars and conferences and spent probably over $1 million myself in those courses. And from I won't mention names, but you know who they are, right? And I wonder, it's a question I've wanted to ask you. Do they understand this principle that you're going to teach today?
I don't think so.
And not want it to be known because that would end their business? Or do you think they just don't understand it?
I think they just didn't understand because they're doing their best. They're teaching, and most people just see what's working and then they teach that to try to duplicate it. So there's not really any like new concepts, new awarenesses. And I'm not saying what I'm teaching is new either, but how it's put together is different. And I think that's what makes the difference.
Yeah, and in their defense, they're doing a lot of good. There are people who see amazing results from, Tony Robbins and people like that, right? They see results, and if you stick with it long enough, if you apply yourself, if you really dig in, you are going to make a change. The problem is how long it takes. That's why I ask are they aware of it, but they don't want to stop because then their business would end. It's kind of like physicians and pharmaceutical companies, I think, who keep pumping drugs, knowing that there could be a cure for cancer, but if it came out, it would end their business. They'd lose billions and billions of dollars, right? I think there's a interesting corollary there, not to cast shade on anybody.
I've thought that through myself, and I honestly think it's just ignorance. And I believe that because this seems too hard, like once they know something's here, they know that there's and they label it as, oh yeah, it must be past pains, traumas, disconnections, all that stuff. So then they say, well, that's why there's therapy and processes, and you got to get to the root of the root and the trauma of the trauma. And yeah, you can do that too, but it's still, a lot of it is on this philosophy, which is put in the reps, do it over and over, and it don't stop, and eventually it'll change. which is
Go to
true. It's
counseling for
100%
multiple
true.
years. I mean, et cetera, et cetera.
100% true. Well, mostly true. Some of it, they still go 30 years and they haven't changed. So,
Yeah.
so
So
this
Tyler,
is the
I'm gonna cut you off because
yeah.
we're up against our first break. But when we come
Okay.
back, we're gonna learn about what the other A is. It's the
Yeah.
opposite of the addiction. It's really interesting. I mean, when I learned this from you, it was a paradigm shift for me. It was very very revelatory, right? Revelatory. And so we'll go to break. Don't go away. We're visiting with Tyler Watson of Elite Performance Coaching. I told you I know it. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Finding Certainty. We're visiting with Tyler Watson. He is the founder and CEO of Elite Performance Coaching, and he's sharing with us, if you've been listening, a way to really transform our lives and do so much more quickly, much less expensively, much more permanently, right, Tyler? Um, we've been talking about how one of the things we do through our minds, it's ingrained in us through habits and upbringing and even DNA, I believe, that we have addictions to certain things. We also have, and I'm gonna let the cat out of the bag, Tyler, but we also have allergies, right? That's the other A. So
Correct.
explain that to us. Tell us how the
Yep.
other side of the coin affects us and what we can do about it.
So allergies are kind of like that magnet. If you think about the addictions, the magnet sticking together, if you flip the magnet over, no matter how hard you push, it's not going to stick. And it repels and repels and repels. So it's kind of like when you eat a bad burrito, you eat it and you're like, man, and you get sick from it. And you're like, I never want to eat a burrito again. What happens is we form these patterns or push responses away from things that might even be good for us. So you could, just like that bad burrito where your body's like, negative association. You can tie negative associations or non-ideal associations or allergies towards love, towards wealth, towards any type of ideal situation. So you can literally be allergic to your goals.
Well, it's like, and it's subconscious oftentimes, right? It's like we grew up hearing money is the root of all evil, and a rich man never got into heaven, and that's what they think, and we create this allergy in our mind and in our cells, in our body, that we may not even be aware.
In your cells, right? And the same thing can happen in cellular memory. And if you do some research on organ transplants, there's some crazy stories about people who will have a heart transplant or a liver transplant, and then they'll start to take on different behaviors that the donor had, cravings, memories, even so much so that a person found a killer of one of the victims who donated based on visions that this person was having. So you think about that, it's like, that's not subconscious. That's something from the tissues in the body and transferred over memory. And so we got to change that memory.
Yeah, Tyler, if I can, I worked in physical therapy in the Army. I was in the Army for 9 years, spent about 4 years in physical therapy and about 5 years in counterintelligence. Made a shift after a mission. I served a mission in Italy for my church for 2 years. And I remember amputees who still had phantom pain, right?
Exactly.
Because it was in their cell. Their body could remember having that limb, right? and they still felt pain because of it. I think there's some parallels there. That's really
Super
interesting.
parallel. Yeah. And so in our bodies, because I was doing a lot of mindset work, I was doing a lot of subconscious work, and yet it still seems slow. So I even did like hypnosis and things like that. But what I found is through those, if you just work on the subconscious, but your body's still allergic and addicted, a new symptom, non-ideal, will pop out to balance. And that's when you know, okay, there's got to be a better way.
Well, it's true that our bodies, and I think the universe itself, wants equilibrium, right? It wants balance. It wants things to be balanced. And so if we're not creating that balance, it's going to create it for us, right? It's going to force us
and not just
to
balance,
align,
but
as you call it.
It'll take you to the threshold that you're addicted and allergic to. So and there's a lot of books on this, even they teach this philosophy, but they don't teach the how. So I was listening to a motivational book where he's like, oh yeah, we all have like this, and they even call it like a money threshold, like a thermostat. And it's at this level. But then the solution makes me want to pound my head against the wall. The solution is, well, we got to focus our mindset, repetition, meditation, work harder and really amplify that. And I'm like, no, that is so slow and so counterproductive, because if you're allergic to your goal and all you are is thinking about it all the time, you're actually causing yourself non-ideal responses, just like those magnets, pushing and pulling.
And we might feel better in the moment when we create that visualization board, or we write out those goals, and then we try checking them off. We feel like we're doing something, right? But to your point, we're working hard, just not working effectively. We're not working smart.
Yeah. And a good analogy is like this. Think about a car, a vehicle. If you're driving down the road as an entrepreneur or as a business owner, you're going 100 miles an hour. You are driving as fast as you can. And here's what most philosophies teach. So you're driving down, and let's say something happens. You hit a road bump, because they're there, you're going to hit something, and your axle bends. It totally bends. And because you're going to be thinking positive and working harder, you keep pushing the pedal down, and you just visualize the wheel being okay. And you just think about happy, positive things, and you see yourself going there. And you're even getting better at driving, because it's hard to drive with that bent axle. So you're improving your skill set. However, the wheel explodes, so then you have to lean one way, and then you're countering it, and then eventually all wheels are exploded, your motor is burnt out, but you feel happy because you're thinking positive and you know you're going to keep doing it. That's what's basically we're saying.
Right, you're gripping tighter to the steering wheel, but it's just not enough.
So you have to unkink the axle. You have to align yourself by getting rid of these allergies and addictions, so that the resistance doesn't fight against you, it works for you. And that's the whole goal, is in a state of alignment, there is no fight, flight, and there's only what's called choice. If I'm being pushed or pulled, I feel like a victim. I feel like I'm incapable. I feel like I can't. But if I can get myself into a state of alignment, I have 100% choice over my choices and on my outcomes, which becomes a really cool game to play.
It's very self-perpetuating, isn't it? When you get in alignment, and I highly recommend, if you're listening, that you order Tyler's book. It's called The Alignment Effect by Tyler Watson. But once you get into alignment and you start balancing out those addictions and those allergies, as you talk about how to do that, I think you start having little successes, and then you start having bigger successes, and you start having bigger and bigger successes, and it creates a ripple effect, right? That's really, like I said, self-perpetuating. It's compounding. It's like compounding interest, right? Is that a safe way to explain it?
Yeah, and yet sometimes you have huge wins. Like one shift is all. Like I had a guy when I first developed this, it actually started with a gluten allergy, and my wife was struggling with this gluten where if she'd ate gluten for 6-7 years, this had been going on, she'd get bloated, she'd feel really bad, kind of like no energy levels. So I tried a lot of techniques. My dad being a clinical kinesiologist, like we did a lot of different food techniques. So I did these techniques and it wouldn't stick. It felt like she'd have a momentary change, but then she'd relapse. So then I became really obsessed with allergies at first. And I was like, what is it that creates an allergy in the body? Why is this happening with her food? And in the middle of the night, I had this download. And I don't get dreams very often. When I do, I think God's just like, hey, Tyler, you have not been listening. So here, like, here you go. And so I had this moment of just like a slap to my face of just, oh, this is what it is. And what the idea was that the only reason she would ever suffer with a gluten allergy is if some part of her at a cellular level, some part of her cells was pushing away the ideal of gluten and holding on to the non-ideal. And so I thought, well, how do you change this? Like this would be cool, but what's the solution? And then I got this download of compiling 16 different pages, pulling from 10 different techniques into one methodology that is so thorough that eliminates all the fight-flight responses from the body so that the person is no longer being pushed or pulled, but in full choice. So I did it. And I did it on her. And back then it took like an hour and a half. Now I can do it in like 5-10 minutes on people. And some of them are a little longer. So I did it on her. And the first thing she said was that she wants to eat some pizza and toast. And so that day she had pizza, toast, no problems. And it's been over 5 years, no problems with gluten. So we started with food and
That's
it gets
incredible.
better from there. So,
Well, and you've gone on from there as you've perfected this approach, this methodology, and you've proven. It's not just that you've found or that you're finding. You have now proven many times over that this applies in all these other areas, right? A lot of people, they're looking to improve their career or be successful in their business, make more income. It even applies in that. And if I can interject, tell us a little bit about your TED Talk. I wanted to tell you congratulations. I know you just did it about a week ago, and
yeah,
nice job on the TEDx. And
thanks.
how did it go? And
Yeah,
maybe
it was
share with
actually
us the recap.
really interesting because I've been speaking for years. I've gotten really good at it. I've worked on a lot of my allergies and addictions growing up. And this was the first time that I've been really triggered in a long time, actually. And because I've done so much work on myself, but it came back to when I was a kid.
Triggered in what sense?
Yeah, memorizing. So I used to struggle terribly with memorizing anything. And looking back, I had dyslexia. Like I couldn't remember right or left for the life of me. Any flashcard that would come up, I'd see it, but then it would be backwards and I couldn't memorize. Like it would shut my whole system down.
Yeah.
And I had trouble reading. I had trouble geography. I could not pass at all. Spelling was the worst. Like anything around that, math, terrible. So for me, I just felt like I was broken. I just felt like something's wrong with me. And doing the TED Talk, most of my speeches, this interview, I don't have to memorize anything, right? It's just let's speak from the heart. Let's speak what people need.
Yeah.
But the TED Talk, you have to have it word for word memorized. And for me, that was like 7 to 8 minutes of memorizing, which I have only done something like little verses like this big, and then I forget them. I can't even remember lyrics to songs. So for me, I had some triggers about
That's a long time.
how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
So I worked
imagine.
on myself. I did my process. I did the cellular alignment technique, and I went through some massive shifts on all the things that I had limitations around memorizing. And it was so freeing and liberating. I remember doing the TED Talk, and it felt so cool to just deliver it and feel so good, proud of myself, to be like, man, to someone else, it'd be like, oh yeah, that's no big deal. But for me, this was something that was a core identity definer. And it was so hard that I did a mission too for my church. And I would memorize one scripture, literally repeating it almost every, like for a whole hour, writing it out, erasing it, doing all the mindset tricks. And as soon as I'd have it down where I could say like 3 lines or 4 lines, if I memorized one other thing, I'd forget everything from the previous one. Like it'd be gone, like wiped clean. And so I had a lot of issues. So yeah, it was awesome just to deliver it, get it done, feel so good about myself, feel proud of myself, knowing that what I teach works. And I talked about resistance, that there's 2 forms of resistance, just like those magnets, and that it doesn't define you, it refines you. So the more you resist something, it actually shows you the way. It is the path you need to lean in on, shift, so that you can get the result you're looking for.
I think as people are listening to you, Tyler, there's probably 3 emotions going on, because I experienced them when I first met you. I thought, first, there's always the pessimist deep inside you that goes, "This sounds like crap. I don't believe it, right? It sounds too good to be true, right?"
Well, first thing,
and that's an addiction. I think a lot of us have addiction
it's a
to
coping mechanism to protect yourself from letdown.
It is. Yeah, and some will tell you, "I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist," right? Or whatever. But so I think there's that emotion, and there's also this emotion of hope, right? Could this actually work, and could it actually help me? I think there's a lot of people out there looking for that glimmer of hope. You're gonna have a small percentage. I'm probably one of those who hears a good idea and thinks, "Let's do this. That sounds good. Let's go for it." Right? I'm an eternal optimist for one thing, but I've proven many times that things are not too good to be true. I've seen it in our business. We talk to our customers about it every day, right? But I know you work with people wherever they're at, right? The skeptic who wants to believe and just is having a hard time, the one who's hopeful, and the other one who's just, they're going 100 miles an hour and they're waiting for you to catch up, right? Is that a fair statement that this applies to anyone wherever they are in their journey?
Yes, you could believe it. The process that I teach doesn't take belief, because it's built upon principles that are real no matter your belief system. So if somebody just wants to change, that's all you need. And I've created it to counter all the non-beliefs, because the non-belief is a pattern. It's an addiction. And that's why this is taught so much, is just change your thoughts, just change how you feel about it, just change your physiology, which is partially true, but the problem with most people who teach change your physiology, it's through repetition and passion. Like, get up, go, drill it more, which is partially true. But instead of having to drill it and force it, which is the long route, why not just go in, rewire it, and then you're done? Like, now you don't have to drill it. You don't have to imagine it. You don't have to think it. You just reprogram it. Done. Thank you.
100%. Well, we are up against our next and last break. We're going to take a quick advertising break so our sponsors can look at you. You can look at us. And we are visiting with Tyler Watson, elite performance coaching, because he helps his clients to perform better in the areas in which they want to perform better. And we're going to talk just when we come back a little bit about how he does it. I'm not going to go into too much detail here because this show is only so long. And we're also going to share some ways to get a hold of him, to learn more. You can subscribe to a service he has that starts to teach you these skills. And then I want to share an analogy that I learned years ago that I think applies to what we're talking about. So don't go away. We're here on Finding Certainty, and we will be right back with you in just a moment. We're back on finding certainty. I was talking before the break here with Tyler Watson of Elite Performance Coaching, about the ways in which we either are skeptical about new ideas and methodologies, we're hopeful, or we're just one of those people who says, let's bring it, let's do this, right? To your point, Tyler, I think it's a really important reminder that it doesn't matter where your belief is or your mindset is. If you want to make changes, that's probably the only caveat. If you don't have desire to change, if you have desire to do that, you're probably not going to do it, right? You're not going to do anything. And so, but what I love about this, and this is I wanted to interject this. You've talked to, when you first introduced this to me, Tyler, you talked about how so many of the methodologies out there, while they do work, there are successes that come out of them. They do make a difference in many cases. They're working with 2% of your body mass, your mind. Well, the mind is powerful. We know that. The subconscious is powerful. It's still 2%. I think it's important to interject and just highlight the fact that what we're talking about is working with the other 98%, right? Our bones, our circulatory system, skeletal system, vascular system, et cetera, and working within those systems and on that cellular level to affect change that is not only rapid but enduring, right? So maybe in just the last, we've got just a few more minutes here. Maybe you can give just a 10,000 foot view of how you do it, right? How's it work?
Yeah. So what I do is a combination of several techniques. So it looks similar to things that you may have seen or experienced, but it's very different in how it's applied, because it's all about allergies and addictions, push, pulls, and resistance. So the whole point of any form of alignment is the first step is to trigger a response. So you actually want to bring up either a negative or a positive. Now, in this, the whole point is to feel something, to trigger your body, okay? You're going to identify where that is. Once you feel it, then we're going to bring some reality around it. We're going to tap that area, which brings presence and awareness to that area. It also, think of it like an anchor. If you, the moment you're listening to something or watching something, like I do this with people on stage, where you can show them certain quantities of money and their whole body will go weak just because their body is allergic to that specific outcome. And the fascinating thing is in the moment of that response, that trigger, that's when you want to tap the area so that it prevents it from being communicated through your entire body. Once you do that, then we take you through a process of tapping, breathing, and smiling. It's really simple, seems stupid, seems impossible that it could work. And as you do that, the whole point is to consciously put yourself into a relaxed, calming state, then flip it into a fight-flight state consciously, and then you lock it in by releasing endorphins through smiling. The cool thing is when you trigger your body, it's like throwing a rock into a pond, making a big ripple, and you're tapping, which is down the back of your back or on your forehead, down to the back of your neck if you're doing it on yourself. That is like creating micro traumas to counter out the macro trauma. So you have this big response that your body's going through, and then you do this process mixed with these other these other three parts, and together as a whole, it eliminates the feeling of pushing or pulling and allows you to be fully conscious and at choice. And this, it's crazy. Like from food allergies, we did this on money. I had a chiropractor who was stuck at 30K a month. He wanted to get to 60K. My whole philosophy was, you must be allergic to that. So we aligned him. Within 2 weeks, brought an additional 30K in through that. And I was like, no, not changing any marketing skills, which we didn't get to hit on, but it's important. It's the top of the equation. And then we went from that to where the final piece was this guy named Craig, who had had a cardiac arrest due to stress in his business. And for 5 years, he couldn't function for more than 4 hours a day. If he walked and looked left or right, he'd fall over. He had to wear sunglasses and earplugs. So everything was messed up. He tried His wife had 20 years of experience doing different techniques. He tried everything from neurosurgeons to all sorts of stuff. My theory was, well, the only reason you suffer with that is because some part of you is addicted to the outcome and allergic to what you want. After aligning, he called me back and he literally just started crying. He's like, I am functioning over 8 hours a day. I don't have to wear sunglasses or earplugs. I can go on walks with my wife. I can look to the left and right without falling over. And that's when I knew I needed to teach this. It's different. So I started teaching it. I certify people in it. We get people results. And this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life because it's so fulfilling.
I can imagine it is, right? You know, we come into companies and help them find certainty by improving their profitability. You are helping people and organizations find certainty through alignment. And that's what your book is, right? The Alignment Effect. So how can people get a hold of you if they'd like to learn more? You know, you have a subscription service. It's very affordable that people can get there, kind of dip their foot in the water and start learning and getting to know you. And there's other forms of coaching all the way up to one-on-one coaching with you personally. What's the best way to find you if they want to?
Yeah, best way, go to alignmenteffect.com and grab my book. It's a book funnel, so it'll take you through some things. You can get it on Amazon, but if you do it through us, we'll give you a discount and you'll get on my list so that you can join my challenges. Like, this is a new language for most people, for everybody I've ever taught. And it takes a little time to immerse yourself, to see and to believe it and to experience it. So I suggest start with the book, get on the monthly. It's like less than $10 a month. You can experience massive $1,000 transformations for nothing. So we create it to where it's easy to do, but yet if it's easy to do, it's easy not to do. So just choose to do it because it's easy.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of one of my favorite verses in the scriptures. It talks about planting a seed, and it says the very first thing is just if you desire to believe, right? It starts with the want. And as it starts to grow, as you start to experience it, you feel it more, you understand it better, you want it more, and these ripple effects start to happen, right? And I'm seeing that. I'm experiencing it with you myself. That's why I wanted to have you on the show. You're actually going to meet with my team this afternoon, I know, and go through this with them. If you're out there and you are looking for help in your life, reach out to Tyler. alignmenteffect.com. Be happy to help you. And thanks for being on the show, my friend. I really appreciate you making the time. I know you're busy. I'll let you go. You got a meeting right now. You got to jump to. I understand. I know. So, but thanks for being here. We'll see you a little bit later today. My team's looking forward to hearing from you, and I really appreciate it. I wish you the very best.
Thanks, Patrick, and thanks everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Tyler. If you are seeking certainty in your life, then it's out there. You can find it. We can help. We wish you the very best. Have a great rest of the week and a great weekend. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for tuning into today's episode of Finding Certainty. We hope you've gained some more insight into how to create more certainty in your own business or nonprofit. Join us next week for another taste of the Certainty Experience. Until then, we wish you greater certainty in all that you do.